Because we can both agree that on our side, you have a lot of people that only want to do this for clickbait.
Yeah, grifters.
And virality is that one thing that a lot of people on our side forget is temporary. Because sooner or later, you can only watch the same video over and over again. You can only get so many clicks from all the stuff that you want to get. You can engagement farm where it's just like you try to be as out there as you can to like prove a point or to be outrageous as possible. But nobody in their entire life will ever forget when they had somebody who was personal with them.
So you've done a lot of events for Turning Point.
Absolutely.
You've met with a lot of kids. You just crossed the
250 mark.
250.
250 schools in 3 years.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of air miles.
So what do you say to these kids when you meet them on campus?
I mean, it's varying topics. You know, a lot of people want to talk about the issues of the day, but I mean, like, what are the issues of the day to talk about other than just regular stats if you don't tell people actually how to maneuver through them? Message today is simple. It's just like standing for your beliefs. And it's such a cliche, and I hate cliches because everyone's talking about that. But, you know, when you give people tangible tools on what it actually looks like to stand up when people are saying things to you or when people don't show up and still showing up and being consistent and proving to yourself that the things that you talk to other people are worth living whenever you actually do that, because overall, it's not going to be arguing, debating that proves a point whether or not what you stand for is actually worth it. The only thing that will actually, you know, prove any validity and the choices that you make is time. And you can't rush that. And, you know, but time is where, you know, you prove to yourself and you see the growth that you've done from when you started here to here. And it's also a thing that shows the growth in other people to show who's been all serious as opposed to who's all talk in all of these situations. So it's just a healthy reminder, because what I'm saying to these kids ain't new. I mean, how many more times do I have to ask people what a woman is? I'm getting sick of that. If someone asks me that one more time, I think I'm going to scream. But, you know, a woman is a female adult with XX chromosomes. It's that simple. Nowadays, you have to have so many people that are trying to define that. And, you know, stepping outside of what people are trying to use just for clickbait and actually talk to the issues that deal with the heart of somebody, which is what actually spurs people through movements, through situations, and over like the hype of everything else. And that's the message of today. It's because, you know, people need to be encouraged in the basics that keep things going the way they are, because our side believes in longevity, and it's, you know, longevity that produces all of these other things that can actually help you in all these current situations where we find ourselves, where we actually need more people to actually take a stand for basic stuff. So you give people that, and then in the end, you know, you see what they do with it, but it's got to be something that you're living out yourself, because I can't tell people anything and give them something from a place I haven't been and I'm not willing to go myself.
It's crazy, man. 250 schools, and this is you're even like it's a small chunk of what Turning Point has done.
Oh yeah.
As you go through these schools, and you've gone through, I mean, 2 years under Biden. Now we're back in the Trump administration. Have you noticed an energy shift with the youth?
Oh, definitely. It's just before everyone under Biden, because everyone was getting persecuted for their beliefs and allowing the other side to really pummel and humiliate everybody else. My message today is just like, that's never going to stop when you're on the side of truth, because I said there's never been a time where truth has been popular. It's never been acceptable. It's never been something that's been convenient, and it's never something that works with your schedule when it needs to be spoken for. So it's like truth never knocks on your window and says, you feel like taking a stand today? It puts you in a situation where people know that something needs to be said, and only the people who have the courage to do it. And they go through the ringer of everything, of having to deal with all of that. But in the end, they're the ones that get the reward that now everyone tries to be like and do things that way. But it's a road that's less traveled. It's a road that has more sacrifice and more trouble in the beginning. But I said the reward of that is better in the end when everything else comes from that. But I have seen a big difference. There's a lot more people now that are more, I say, rebellious from like typical, you know, like leftist ideologies that are now been made rules, you know, like, oh, like make sure you properly use someone's pronouns. And everyone's like, no. And I'm like, good for you, you know, and all of those
kids are all
things.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, like there's more of an excitement now that kids know that they actually have the power to actually shift the country to where it can be. And it's just, like I said, all of these things are just basic reminders of what they have at their fingertips, because when you take that stuff away and give it away freely in the name of fear or manipulation through everybody else, that's when things start kind of, you know, being separated. But I've seen a lot more excitement. I mean, look at Charlie's tour stops. You have like thousands and thousands and thousands of kids coming up. You know, now you have more kids like wanting to get involved in, like, now the things that used to make them afraid of, the resistance and the pushback and all of that stuff, is almost kind of like they look forward to it now, which is like
It's a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, all things considered, I think we're moving in the right direction.
I love it, man. Anthony Watson's in here. How did you get into this? I mean, you're a former Olympian. How do you go from being a former Olympian to advocating for the truth with college and high school kids?
Oh, well, I lost everything. It was 2019 in World Championships. This is at the peak of George Floyd. We were in Latvia, and then out of nowhere, a reporter came up to me and did an interview asking what I thought about all the social injustice of the world because I was only one out of 2, maybe 3 black athletes.
We found the black guy.
Yeah.
Guys, get in here.
Yeah,
get in here. We got him.
Before that, nobody cared about my opinion or who I was. They just knew that, hey, there's a Jamaican sliding in a winter sport that's heavily European dominated. And before social issues.
What was your sport?
I did skeleton. So I did the bobsledding. I did bobsledding for Team USA. Tried it for the Jamaican team for a little bit when I switched nations. And then if anyone's seen the movie Cool Runnings.
You were Cool Runnings.
Absolutely. Here we go. Yep. I was waiting for that.
Anthony was Cool Runnings.
But the thing is I joke around and I tell everybody, I was like, you remember in the Cool Runnings movie how at the last race they tipped over and the sled crashed and they didn't cross the finish line? Current team still does that. A lot more than the movie projected. So
really? I
spared myself all the concussion protocols and decided to switch to skeleton, which is a singles person sport on your stomach sliding headfirst down the same ice track. So, I mean, I'm only 4 inches off the ice, head first, chin above the ice, about 4 inches, going 80 miles per hour. It's very exhilarating.
That's wild.
Yeah, my fastest speed ever, I think I've been clocked at 81 miles per hour.
How do you get into a sport like that?
It was the only Olympic sport that took tryouts for Team USA. I wanted to be in track and field so desperately that I was trying to do something for the London trials, and I was in Junior Olympic tracks, AAU, USATF, under 18 and under 20. And then I tore my knee right before the London trials where I was hopefully trying to inch up to like potentially running a sub 10 100 meter because I was in the 10.8, 10.5 category at the time. And then when I came back, I just wasn't as quick after my knee tear. And so I sat down one day, went through every single Team USA page at the time, and then it said that bobsled and skeleton was the only Olympic sport that took tryouts. So I tried out for Team USA, competed with them for 3 years, got to go through the Russia experience by watching some of my teammates and everything else compete and stuff. Then didn't have a clear path to the Olympics, so I switched because the rules of the Olympics are if you have lineage, citizenship, or any kind of connection to another country, the Olympic Committee will then allow you to seek residence there to now represent them. So I have dual citizenship because my father was born in Jamaica and came here to the United States legally. And so with all of that, that's how I was able to compete for the Jamaican. So at the end of my career, that's when everything started going crazy because I had been in the Olympics for, I think, like 10 years at this point.
So you've been hustling.
Yeah.
You're trying to achieve your dreams, and a reporter finds you.
Yep.
And this is during the Summer of Love. And they start asking you questions.
Yeah.
Where does it go from there?
So what happened was like I said, they had known who I was for the past 6 years. Like I had been at World Champs, I had been to an Olympics, I had been every other place. And so, no one ever made anything a black issue at that point. But then now coming up out of nowhere, everyone was just like, so, Anthony, we want to ask you a question. I'm like, okay. Just like, what do you think about all the social injustice in the world and how everything else is going? And I said,
And you probably had a decision to make right there. Because if you lean into the leftist ideology, well, then you got a red carpet towards more interviews, more notoriety, more clicks, more clout. And what did you decide to do?
I just spurred off at the mouth. So I was a little reckless, and I was like, well, this is my, I didn't even think this is my moment to actually have whatever. I was just frustrated with a lot of things because all of my friends that were European and different looking than I am, with Snow White kind of Caucasian, coming from the European backgrounds where black people just don't exist in their countries, all of them felt troubled because I knew none of them were like that. I had dealt with people who were legit prejudice against me when I first started the sport, but I made a community of people that because of how I treated them and how I carried myself actually became my friends. And so they were all feeling some type where they're just like, well, we don't want to get in trouble. We didn't do anything. And I'm like, you guys don't have to apologize for something you didn't do. So I didn't see it as a valiant moment to be like, I'm going to do this. I was just speaking from personal experience. And all I said was, I think BLM is stupid. And the woman was already white. She turned sheet white, and you could almost see through her because she was so shocked at what I said.
That is not a statement you're allowed to make, especially in the direct aftermath of George Floyd.
Yeah, I think this was 3 months after, so this is like at the peak when all of the cities across, when everyone around the world is marching and cities, this is before cities started burning. This is just when everyone was gathering to march.
This is when the donations were rolling in.
Right. And so she's just like, you want to explain? And I was just like, well, I think that, you've got to be an idiot to hire people that don't live in your neighborhood, fly them in, bust them in, have them burn up everything. They get to go home, and then you have to go back and live in the mess that you just created. I said, what child has BLM put through school? I said, what person have they donated for their college fund? I said, what community has been burned up that they've actually helped fix?
What playground have they built in any of these cities?
I said, all of these things were to help make black life better. But I said, if this is what black life is, I said, I don't want it. Because I said, I wasn't raised as a black person. I said, I was raised as a person who just happens to be slightly better tan than the rest of the world. And I said, when people start realizing that it's not about skin color and it's about the heart condition of somebody, I said, that's when you'll realize that those are situations that only get fixed when you have personal experiences with people. And then after that, within a week, it didn't take a week for my sponsors to be like, we can't work with you anymore. And it was people wouldn't return my calls, and then my contracts expired and they wouldn't be renewed. And then other people were just like, yeah, we're not working with you. And then on top of that, I had people like asking for their money back.
Really?
And so I lost everything, had to move back in at home, absolutely had nothing, was out on my own for a little while.
And you weren't trying to make this grand statement. You were just answering a question honestly.
I was just speaking the truth, because I come from places where I've seen black people, treat other people horribly in the name of them just trying to be people who want to, make a point. And I wasn't trying to make a point, but, there were more people that after I said that silently came to me and like, dude, thank you for saying that, because we don't agree with that at all. And, all the black athletes at the time were the ones who were really eating that stuff up, being like, yeah, this is our chance. And I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, especially when it comes to sports, you have no advantage here by using your blackness, because sports is supposed to be best athlete versus best athlete. And I said, and if you lose, that's on you, not because of your skin color.
Yeah.
So that's where I was. And so for a year and a half, it was trying desperately to get back in. It was trying to get sponsors. It was trying to do all these other stuff. And then I was basically blacklisted. No one will touch me now. And it was at that moment where I was just like, I can't be the only one who thinks this way. And so that's how I found Turning Point. And I found that they had an ambassador program. I remember filling it out, talking to the people who run that program, and then got to come to my very first conference at 2020 in December during the lockdown phase of everything. And so that was when I heard a lot of truth from people like doctors who were experts and everything else. And I'm like, okay, so there are people, there's a community out here. So I reached out to a friend of mine that I had met there at my first conference, Taylor Winston, who will hopefully be joining us here in a little bit. And then he and I decided to start doing speaking arrangements on tour. So we were paying out of pocket to go to these places and be like, hey, listen, this is what we've been through and this and that. But I could tell you after the third event of talking about myself, I got really bored.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, what can I give people? What can I give young people that are going to help them want to do the right thing in all of these times? And so that's where my journey in Turning Point started, to the point where I was doing that for 2 years. Paying out of pocket, going to schools here and there, doing events, just being able to talk and encourage young people, until the point where I was able to sit down and, they were like, would you like to do this for us full time? And I'm like, absolutely. And so now my main mission is to get out as much as I can, as far as I can, for as long as I can, for whoever I can. And I can't tell you, even in these past couple of weeks, the amount of tears from people, students alike, who are just stressed out from school and everything that they got to go through, that can finally come someplace and be like, oh, it was nice to not have to deal with any of the political stuff, but just have people invest in our character and invest in us as young people. That's what we value more than anything. Having parents say, like, thank you so much for everything that you're doing for my child, because we've been telling her this, or we've been telling him this for the longest time, but now having somebody else say the exact same thing we're saying, now they know we're not just making it up to make their life difficult. We actually mean it. And so things like that are the reason why I do it, because we can both agree that on our side, you have a lot of people that only want to do this for clickbait.
Yeah, grifters.
And virality is that one thing that a lot of people on our side forget is temporary. Because sooner or later, you can only watch the same video over and over again. You can only get so many clicks from all the stuff that you want to get. You can engagement farm, where it's just like you try to be as out there as you can to like prove a point or to be outrageous as possible. But nobody in their entire life will ever forget when they had somebody who was personal with them. And those are the experiences that I live for, because if I'm able to go someplace and give people an experience that's going to help change their lives, all you need is one person to then start a ripple. And there's one person in a lot of the crowds that I go to that are going to now start taking that to do whatever. So, I mean, like, to me, it's not glamorous. It's not flashy. And a lot of times people look at me like the work that I do sometimes isn't as meaningful as everybody else because I don't have thousands of people showing up to my events. But at the end of the day, it's just like, in this culture war that we're in, you need every person that you can get.
Yep.
And
Amen.
so while everybody else is getting the crowds of the people who are already committed, I'm recruiting. It is how I see it. And going out there to the places where nobody's heard of to try and get more people on our side.
So where are you going tonight?
Tonight, I'm going to Murfreesboro to go speak to a group of young high schoolers at an airport. So the venue that they had was shut down, but they're just like, we're renting a ballroom at the airport. I was like, at the airport?
Wait, so you're going to be at the Murfreesboro
at the
airport?
Murfreesboro airport.
Oh, man. So you know what's crazy is right next to that airport is the Little League fields. And that's where I'm going to be tonight with my boys.
No way.
Yeah, they got a game. So you should come over.
Yeah. What time is their game?
It's going to be at, oh gosh, I'm going to get in trouble now. 6:30? 6:30, I think you got to be there.
I'll be over there by that point.
Let's go.
Yeah, I'll come say hello.
How do you feel about walk-up music for Little Leaguers?
I'm all about it.
You're all about it?
Yeah, get their confidence at a young age. What did they come up to, Baby Shark?
No. We're working on it. We're working on that in the background.
You can always have Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
There you go.
Like all the themes of
some Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, things that actually did to actually encourage kids to be brave. And
I love it. We got Anthony Watson in studio. He is a Turning Point USA contributor. He's going to be in town tonight, Murfreesboro, sending a message of what is your message to the young people?
Message is it's simple. It's stand up. As I'm tired of having to go places where people are able-bodied and able to stand on their own, but it's like they want people to pick them up and carry them. It's like you got 2 feet. So I start every single speech nowadays 3 ways. I said, we need to stand. So I said, what's the definition of stand? I said, Webster's definition of stand is, an upright posture held up on 1 to 2 feet. And I always look, and I'm like, I'm literally standing. And I said, I know that there are some of you who are younger, so I went to the Urban Dictionary definition of what it means to stand. And it says a psychological inner strength of one's inner will. And I'm just like, that's something that you can stand in. And then I said, I know some of you here were born after the year 2005. So I said, I looked up the Gen Z version of what it means to stand. And it says sometimes an unhealthy but obsessive stance over something that one is passionate about. And I said, you've got nobody that has that kind of thing in standing nowadays. I said, people stand as long as people agree. And then as soon as people agree, then they fold and they bend over. But I said, leadership is about taking the hits and getting up. Because I said, when you're driven by something that's bigger than public opinion, I was like, that's what, when you get knocked down 100 times, will help you stand up 101. That's why when nobody shows up to your events, it'll still make you show up just in case there's one person that wants to do that. I said, standing is always for the one person that's wanting to do what you do but doesn't have the strength to. I said, standing is for the people that need someone to do something, but I said, won't have the courage to do it. I said, standing is showing up early. Standing is leaving late. Standing is doing the tasks that nobody else wants to do, because in the life that we live, it's not about being flashy and attractive. I said, leadership is doing the roles that nobody else wants to in the times that nobody else can. And I said, for the reward that you have. And I said, but not for the reward that you're thinking of. I said, it's more for the internal thing to prove yourself. Because I said, getting older doesn't make your situations in life get easier. I said, and you ask any adult in life, I was like, the issues seem to get harder when you have kids and bills and mortgages and all these other things. And I said, the only thing that's supposed to get easier is your willingness to step up to those kinds of challenges.
Amen.
So I said, well, the sooner you get used to stepping up to all of these kinds of things, I said, everything else doesn't seem like it's going to tax you. So there may be some things that catch you off guard and knock you down. And I said, you'll be stunned and dazed, but I said, you're not used to being down. So I said, you'll bounce up and get up real quick. And I said, and the times that things do pummel you, that's why it's important. The people that you keep in your life are the ones that will help you stand up when you don't have the strength to do so that you can get back on track. So I said, everything plays a part into standing these days. The company you keep, the decisions you make, the people you hang out with, the areas that you go. And I said, not just the things that you do, but how it appears to other people.